Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mark Bell's Power Project Podcast. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by our homies at Free Sleeve.
You know, the funny thing is the other day I was looking up LeBron James recovery because you know how that guy spends millions of dollars on his body. And I saw pictures of like ice packs on his knees. Like it's doing? Like ice plastic bags around his knees.
I thought he was the best.
But you know, the funny thing is like the Free Sleeve, it's this latex free ice sleeve that you can literally put on your elbows. You can put it on your knees. And it's so dope because after a training session, I go home, I do my thing. I pull the Free Sleeve out of the freezer, put it on my knees, put it on my elbows, walk around, do my nightly routine. I'm not stuck sitting down with stuff on my knees and elbows. I take it off. I feel great. I go to sleep. It's perfect.
So what you're saying is you don't ice your body the way that caveman would do it back in the day.
Pro athletes these days, man. Shame on them.
You guys need to upgrade your ice packs right now by heading over to freesleeve.com. That's FREEZESLEEVE.com. At checkout, enter promo code POWER25 for 25% off your order and free domestic shipping.
For us to start the show, right, Matt?
Dude, I've got the whole thing.
Okay, good.
I got it all dialed in.
Wait, legit, he's good freestyle?
No, that would be sick though, wouldn't it? Imagine if he did.
I was like, wait, what?
Imagine if he did. We'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he is. I mean,
No, dude, yeah.
He's full of surprises.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's anything like that.
I'll come ready with one for next time, dude.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, what are you guys teaching over there at the academy?
Yeah, that's right. It's all freestyle over there. Absolutely.
That'd be sick.
Are we rocking and rolling?
We're rolling and rocking.
All right, Matt. So I got an opportunity to go visit your place. I don't know how to say your last name, so I need to.
Dude, I don't either. We say Beaudreau.
Is it French or something? What's going on?
French, dude. Yeah, we say Beaudreau, which is super Californiaing it up.
It's not Beaudreau.
It might be.
How come there's not like an X? Shouldn't there be an X in there?
There's supposed to be an X, dude. Anytime, so like if I speak in France or I go speak in Canada, they say it all beautiful, you know. But
they say it really nice.
They say it really nice. I'm
Maybe
like, that's awesome. Yeah. So, but if anybody gets close
to say it,
it probably is, dude. But if anybody gets close, I just nod my head. And
give us some of your background before we dive into this really, really interesting school that you have. I know you have like an MMA background, you got sports background, some working out background. So give us a little bit of your background, maybe where you grew up and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Local-ish, so Vacaville. So Dennis Alexio was the man in Vacaville. So if you ever seen Kickboxer?
So maybe move this over a little bit so you stay in front of it.
Yeah, you bet. So Kickboxer, right, with Van Damme.
Oh,
okay,
wow.
So the guy that played his brother that gets crippled a bit. So that's my coach. Right. So I grew up with him and kickboxing. So kickboxing was my thing growing up, and but was a good athlete, football, basketball, all that good stuff, and did the normal kid stuff, and got done with high school and was like, cool, man. Now what? Right, I got my straight A's, but I got nothing.
I can't stop thinking about this Van Damme movie. Hold on a second. Your coach though, like. You're after you've known your coach for a long time, you're like, this is bullshit. Like my coach, no one's crippling his spine.
That's it, right? That was the thing, dude. When we were younger, we watch it, we're like, dude, Kickboxer fires us up, but Dennis would have beat the shit out of both these dudes. Like, there's no way.
He would have killed everybody.
No way. Like, screw Van Damme, like, he would have crushed all these dudes, right? He was a bad dude. He's a legit bad. I'm pretty sure he's in prison, but he's legit. I think he is now. But he was a stud, you know. And back then, I mean, he was the man to beat. So. But yeah, man, I did the normal stuff, dude. Got all my straight A's but got out of school and I was like, cool, I can play school, I can talk to girls, I'm a decent athlete, but that's it. All right, like I got nothing off the world. Guess I'll go to college, dude. So I go to college and played the same game. So played that game, got my straight A's, and got better at girls and got better at sports, and was like, cool, I still have nothing to offer the world, you know. And so my senior year I was graduating in 2002. So 2001, obviously September 11th, 2001, right? So that hit, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing kinesiology because I like sports, but I got no direction, man. So I actually applied at that point and started going through the background process for Secret Service. And that's what I was going to do. And so I went through that whole thing and was offered a job at the White House. And that's where I was going to go as soon as I graduated. So ended up talking to a Secret Service agent. I was going to graduate in May of 2002. So I talked to him in, it was like April. And I'd already had the job offer and was like, all right, man. He's like, don't do it. And there was a longer tail story on that. And he's like, you're going to sacrifice your integrity. I know you're a good dude. Like, don't do this. And I'm like, all right, cool. I will take your advice. I'd imagine
you have to turn the other way sometimes when your moral values are compromised.
And that's basically what he was laying out.
You're getting paid for it, right?
You're getting paid to do exactly that. Yeah, dude. And so that's kind of what he laid out. So I'm like, all right, cool. I will take your advice. I won't do it. And now I'm unemployed.
What
know?
exactly about what he said made you be like, I don't want to do that? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of he alluded to just a game being played, right? And so he's like, the everything that you're getting through mainstream media isn't all, a lot of times it's just versions of the truth. I don't think it's anything that was, anybody was unaware of, but what really hit was that he was saying, look, dude, I know you. He's known me since I was young. And he says, I know you. He's like, you don't separate from what you believe, and you'll have to you'll have to play this game, and it's an integrity thing, dude, and you're not going to dig that.
Got it.
So it was really that, man. So I trusted him. And I'm glad I did. So
you were going to be like the next Jack Bauer and shit, right?
Jack was going to be the first Matt Beaudreau. That's the way it was going to go, man. Yeah. So ended up pulling out of that, and I had met some dudes kind of in the mixed martial arts realm there. I'd always kickbox, right? So I was walking in the Chico State gym right before graduation, and I see these guys in there, and they're wrestling around, and
it was kind of new at the time.
So it was
MMA
really
type
new
stuff,
at the time. There really wasn't a whole lot going on.
You didn't know who could beat who. Kickboxing, jiu-jitsu.
No idea. Right?
Wrestling.
Exactly. So I see these kind of skinny little dudes, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I'm going to walk in there and just kind of, it was just this basic mat room, dude. So I just walk in, and I was with my other buddy, and I'm like, oh, there's some bags and stuff too. So I go over and I'm kicking the bags, and, I had stand up. So I'm kicking the bags, and listen, like, hey man, you guys, do you want to roll? And it's a couple skinny little dudes. And I'm like, sure, and just got my ass handed.
You're like, I'm going to kill these guys.
Watch this, dude. Yeah. I was like, hey guys, my coach was Dennis. No, I didn't start with that, but I was like, I got this, dude. Got just destroyed. Got destroyed, and I'm like, dude, this is awesome.
Just
like,
choked out, tapped out in every way possible, right?
Quickly, dude, quickly. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta see what you're doing. So I ended up finding out one of these guys was one of the original Lions Den guys, Ken Shamrock's whole crew, right? And so that just kind of turned that on for me. So I started. My ground game still sucks. It's not upper echelon by any stretch, but I trained with him long enough, and started getting into some local fights, and just kind of rolled with that for a while. So it was cool, man. And
Tell me about some of those local fights, because I'd imagine things were probably a little sketchy back then.
Dude,
like,
so sketchy.
Are you in like an alley or something?
So sketchy, man. Some of these were kind of smokers, like backyard sort of deals. So like even my first fight had more, had some prestige around it, because it was Ken who was doing it. Ken was actually trying to start his own sort of deal, right? So he called me. There was actually a Lions Den tryout, and little did I know there was a league coming up called the IFL, right, which lasted for a little bit. It was kind of this team-based league, and so he was going to do a tryout for that. So he calls me up, and he's like, "Hey, man, you're coming up to Susanville, going to come up to my house, and you're going to do this tryout, and are you game? Are you in?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm there." And he's like, "Cool." He's like, "I want you to be there, a day early too." And this is like a week. I'm just finding this out like a week before the tryout, right? And so I'm like, okay, yeah, man, I'm there. Like, let me know what you need. He's like, cool, I need you to come up the day before too. I'm like, all right, man, if you need me to come up the day before, then great. He's like, yeah, because you have a fight. I'm going to put on an event that night, and you're fighting. I'm like, okay, you got it, man. I was like, what do I need to weigh? He said, I don't know, what do you weigh right now? I'm like, I don't know, I'm like 185. He's like, cool, can you get to 170 by this weekend? And I'm like, cool, man, yeah, done. Like, I'll get to 170, piece of cake. No idea what I was doing. So I came in at like 162. I mean, it was just like the shittiest weight cut, right? So we get up to Susanville, and dude, so we had Vernon White and Kit Cope and some of these dudes on the card, but we had Bruce Buffer announcing. We got Boss Rutan, Guy Metzger, Randy Couture, like all these dudes are ringside, like some of the legends, right? And I'm like, I just had this super shitty weight cut. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, let's see what happens, and then we're in Susanville too, which is already like 7,000 feet or whatever the altitude is there. So I pretty much blew my load in the back warming up, and went out like kind of gassed, and went out there, and I got lucky enough to win the fight, and which was cool. Yeah, dude, that's what I said. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, like, lucky the guy didn't know how tired you were.
He had no idea. Yeah, totally. And he came in, and there was no testing. There was no he was a sketchy dude too that trained kind of down. There was no testing, no nothing. We were just bleeding all over each other, and then afterwards after we beat the piss out of each other, it was like, hey man, nice to meet you. And I've actually still stayed in contact with that dude. But nice. Yeah, so none of them were, so that was actually probably the most legit. I had other smokers at like AKA and some of the bigger gyms and stuff too. But so did 9 of those, which was cool.
What do you think attracted you to fighting? Like it's such a strange sport, and I realize a lot of people get into it for the sport of it, because it sounds like you had some background in it. But it is an odd thing. Like it's the basis for all sports. You know, two people are like quote unquote fighting for a rebound in basketball,
right?
Or you're fighting and defending position in football. Yep. But you know, at the core of it, it's like we really just want to see the people fight. They could take off all their equipment, and we would probably be more excited to watch that.
100%.
What got you pumped up to try something like that? Because it's very intimidating.
You know what, man? There was a transition that kind of took place. So it started out. My dad is a hard dude, just a very hard individual. Was working in the prison system. Probably should have lived there instead. Was just a hard man. And so I wanted to get into sports early on, and had tried to get into basketball early on, but I was kind of this sensitive kid and get the ball stolen, and I'm like, oh, I cry, I'm crying, and I was like, fuck this game. And so he's like, cool, man, if you're gonna,
why did you steal it from me? You're not supposed to steal from people.
Dude, I legit remember being there was this like community. It was like a camp, and I remember walking in with my basketball, and I'm like, dude, my best friend's gonna be here. Like, who's it gonna be? And the kid comes in and takes it from me. And I just turn around and run back. I'm like, this sucks. Everybody's so mean, And he's like, get your ass back in there.
Dude, I would have been right with you.
And I was like, I was done. And he's like, dude, get back in there. And I'm like, no, I'm not going back in there. Like, these people suck, So he's like, cool. He's like, you're going to go back in there, or I'm going to have you try something else. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try anything else because, whatever. So then the next day he's taking me to go get punched in the face, right? So it's like, It's like, cool, man. If you don't want to play basketball, you're going to go fight some human beings, right? So he was just kind of that dude. And, he finds out in 4th grade that he's a couple 5th graders picking on me, and we see them walking on the street on the weekend. I'm like, those are the dudes. He's like, cool, pulls over, and he's like, get out and go fight them. Those 2 boys right there, they're big, like, get out and go fight them. Right. So there starts out being like okay, my dad is a savage, and so I need to step up because I'm not going to survive. Right. So it starts out with that. But then as I got into it, I started to get kind of that love for the introspection. It's not about the fight. It's about what's going on in your head. It really
You're really fighting yourself. Fight Club type stuff.
That Fight Club mentality, right? And of course, I hadn't read Fight Club at that time or seen Fight Club or whatever, but it was that. It was like, cool, man. Like, it really doesn't matter if the dude looks like you, if the dude looks like you, if the dude looks like her. Like, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to learn something about me while I'm in this. And that's what ultimately attracted to me. And, I stayed with it because of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still do that now?
I haven't in a while, man. When we moved from the Bay, and I would go out to Uriah's place a little bit and help some of those dudes with just fight camps and sparring and doing what I could do. But then we had kids and started building businesses, and so I do it in my garage. I'll kick the bag in my garage and get after it for a few rounds and stuff. But I haven't gotten to punch anybody or be punched in a while, so which is fine. And I'm there's an element we always miss it. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm fine with not getting punched in the face.
What do you do for fitness now? So you're staying in good shape.
I appreciate it, man. It really is a garage gym situation. So I got the bag up, I got the prowler, I got dips. We got, I got a whole bunch of injuries and things too. So we got dip station, pull up station, and it's predominantly body weight stuff and out sprinting and jumping and just trying to stay mobile and stay out of pain. Ish, but I'm consistent with it. It's daily. Does that help you from a mental side since you don't have the fighting anymore? It's 1,000% helps. 1,000% helps. It helps kind of scratch that. It scratches that itch. But it also just helps. I mean, you guys know it helps just mentally anyways, man. I got a lot of things that I'm taking on business wise. And so I just think more clearly. I'm just a better version of myself when I do it, so I stay consistent with it. Yeah. And I want to be the example to my kids too. That's always that's a big driving factor for me too, So anything in particular with food? You do anything crazy with your food, or you just pretty much try not to eat like an asshole? I always try not to eat like an asshole. But I'm pretty disciplined on that too. So again, it's kind of that introspection and the self-awareness part of it. I do function better, much higher protein, more of a meat focused kind of deal. I love vegetables. I have a hard time with them. They don't treat me well. So it's a whole lot more meat. It's
like in here?
like in here.
Okay.
Yeah, man, I struggle. I can do some fermented stuff, but that's about it. But I pay attention to it, how everything makes me feel, how it makes me think, very, very much. So that's the majority. Honestly, I'm pretty carnivorous on that side. Post workout though, I can handle some real basic like white rice kind of stuff as far as recovery. And I don't deviate a whole hell of a lot from that. A little fruit here and there, but all real stuff. We don't do the non-real stuff in our house, and
Nice.
you know, the kids know that too. It doesn't matter if we're at school and everybody brings cupcakes. My kids are like, "That's awesome, man! Congratulations, happy birthday!" But like they don't jump in either because they're self-aware too on how it makes them feel. So all real food.
And your kids go to the school that you run, I'd
Hell
imagine,
yes,
right?
absolutely. They're the reason, man. They're the reason. They were the driving force. You know, it was legitimately like, hey, I got 3 kids now, and at the time when I was launching, I had one that was ready, one that was almost ready as far as school age, and it was like, cool, if we get them and 7, 8 other kids, like, great. That's fine. Obviously, it's taken off way more than that, which I'm glad it has. But yeah, they were the driving force, dude.
I haven't really looked into a lot of other schools, but when I went to your school and when you were explaining everything about it, I was just like really blown away because I was just like, I never heard of anything like this. And then the other stuff you mentioned, it's just like one thing after, like I couldn't take that day in very well because I was like, my head was spinning because it's the stuff that you mentioned, and the law here in California for your at-home schooling.
Yep.
You were mentioning that there's like no curriculum to it and stuff like that, and I was just like, how is that possible? Like, especially here in California, where we kind of have a lot of rules. Yeah. But that's true from what you said, right?
It is, man. So this is one of the interesting things, and I look at it from a standpoint of, if you look at it from a business standpoint, look at it from like a monopoly, right? So people get all fired up. Amazon's got fucking all the business in the world, and people are like, oh my God, this thing, they're a monopoly. They're driving all this kind of, well, the biggest monopoly in our country is arguably public schooling, right? 92, 93, 94% of our kids.
Don't say that.
Everybody, I hear that a lot. And it's like they drive their narrative around everything, and we've all grown up in that. We all grew up going the same thing. So it's one of those things we just don't question at all, right? And so when you realize, wait a second, you can actually, one of the easiest ways to get into college is actually you don't have to even have a high school diploma. Like,
wait, what? Pause, really?
Oh, really? One of the easiest ways.
See what I'm talking about?
One of the easiest ways to get into college.
We're going to be so confused after this show.
Yeah, exactly, dude. So one of the easiest ways is to not get you can drop out at 16, go take free community college courses, right? Play the game there. You have a higher chance of transferring into almost any university.
I was going to say they probably kind of feel sorry for you or whatever. There's probably like a law or rule that allows you to get in without a high school degree, right?
It's like college part is all the game too, right? So that helps. And so when you go to, kind of the homeschool route. So again, homeschool is another thing that, like, when we grew up, there was very much like, okay, cool, man, homeschool, you're a weirdo, right? Done. Never mind the fact that we had weirdos in class with us too, right? We had weirdos in public school. Like, if you're weird, you're weird. Like, it is. But more people that were just kind of off kilter maybe used to do it. That's not the case anymore, percentage wise. You got a lot of people that are just choosing to do that. And so our whole school is built around people who now register with the state as homeschooled. You don't have to submit, well, here's what I'm doing here, the standards I'm meeting. You don't. You do a 5-minute thing online saying, my kid's going to homeschool this year, and you're done. Like, that's it. And so then they come to us and they actually do cool shit rather than going and sitting down.
Is there some sort of standardized testing, like to see if your kid is actually in 9th grade and stuff like that too?
Nope.
If you're homeschooled, there's
no. And
is there a recommendation?
No, not from this. I mean, they'll love for you to do it, and that's great. But I can tell you right now, I run multiple 7-figure businesses. I get paid by companies to go good money to stand on stage and go speak with some of the biggest organizations in the world. And to prove a point, last year, I took a standardized test for the parents at my school, and my math level, I was at 6th grade, right? And I got straight A's. I got straight A's all through school, but I didn't actually learn anything, right? I didn't learn it. I played that game, right? I could go back and figure out how to teach them, but the reality is nobody gives a shit about algebra. Nobody cares about trigonometry. And I'm not saying don't ever do it, and that's great if you want to work towards it. We want our kids to continue to push the envelope, but to say that that's the end all be all is provable horseshit.
it is really kind of annoying when like you do all these things, you take these math courses, high level math, etc. You finish up and you end up doing nothing with it, because that's kind of what happened with me. It's like, why did I do all this? Why did I waste all that money at college when everything I do now, I'm not using any of that?
Yeah.
So
and dude, not only did it happen with you, it happens with almost everybody.
I know.
Happens with almost everybody. And now we've raised the price of that experience too. So now your piece of paper is 3 times more expensive. You come out, you're not doing anything with it. Even with my kinesiology degree, right? I had to take geology and, liberal 1800 women or whatever. Like, they give you these random things that you got to take. I'm like, hold on, I'm doing a kinesiology degree. Yeah. And they're like, doesn't matter. You're going to be well-rounded. I'm like, well-rounded just means I got to give you more money. That's all it is. I have a cool question.
Right? Yeah. Am I wrong? Because I heard that like in China and other places. No, I probably am on this, but I heard like in China, right? Like if you want to go towards medicine or something, you go to higher education, you only study those things. You don't have to do all this geology,
superfluous kind of stuff.
Right. Is that correct? Or
there's you can't generally. It depends on the school.
Gotcha.
Right. It depends on what they need to do. So, and there are universities and colleges here too that will allow you to focus more and do this, but they're not your brands, right? And they're usually these small little liberal arts, kind of deals. And a lot of times they're struggling financially too. And so they're just looking for a different, so it just depends. But that's where it's going. It's more and more of that. Colleges aren't going to be, they're not going to be relevant anymore. I mean, the brands are going to stick around, but they're going to
Let's say it's, let's just fast forward for a moment here, and let's just say it's like 2030.
Yeah.
Are there a lot less public schools, and there are a lot more schools like yours?
Absolutely. There's without a doubt, this COVID situation.
And this part, this thing that's going on now.
Dude, it's been this like emperor has no clothes moment, because people are realizing, wait a second, Mike, hold on a second. Either I'm pulling my kid out and they're doing all the stuff that they were normally doing in this 8-hour day and they're finishing it in 12 minutes, right? And they're just like, wait a second, why are we spending all this time? Or they're getting on their Zoom calls with these teachers and they're like, oh my gosh, like the teachers are really struggling with Zoom and all of this stuff that's coming out is crazy. And I'm like, no. You're watching what was happening in the classroom as well. Like it was still just as jacked up too. So people are starting to realize that. And then you've got more proof of concept for places like mine too. We had a sister campus in Austin yesterday, sent out an email and like, hey, just want to celebrate this. We got this kid, Chris. Chris has been here with us his whole school career, just landed his dream job in Silicon Valley. He beat out 200 college graduates and 50 industry experts for this position. He starts tomorrow. Let's congratulate him. Oh, by the way, he's 17 and he still hasn't graduated from our school. He will graduate in May, right? And this is a position that's only hires college grads. And we've had the same thing. We had a company that, here locally that only ever hired college grads. It's a national company. And they took one of our high school kids at 17 straight and he's going straight there. There's that shift is taking place and more proof of concept is only going to exacerbate that.
And maybe just public school has been exposed, and maybe what we're learning is there's not, for the amount of time you go to school, the amount of days that you go to school in a school year, the amount of years you go to school, which is over a decade, and it's mandated and it's the law,
right?
Which I think is absolutely asinine. And the amount of hours that you go to school. I think all of it's overkill. But we're seeing, I think people can admit, wow, okay, you don't really learn nearly as much as we thought you did. And we can all agree, like there's wasted time and there's wasted effort in college and stuff. But I think we can also kind of say, okay, well, maybe some of it's wasted, but you did learn to do things that you didn't want to do when you normally didn't want to do it, but you got it done anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But you also don't need to learn that over the course of a decade. You also don't need
can you learn it somewhere else?
You can learn it in other ways very easily.
Right. My kids with their businesses, they end up purchasing horses, right? So we have horses on our property. They don't always feel like getting up and mucking the stalls and shoveling shit. Right. They're learning to do things that they need to do, whether they want to do them or not. Right. Personal responsibility. We don't have to go to school to learn those things, and
you can always place it back on them and say, hey, remember, you wanted these horses. Bingo. If you don't want to continue with this, we can work on looking at something else. But for now, you got to shovel the shit.
This is what it is. That's exactly it. I mean, all of these things can be learned outside the context of school, and then again, just the focus. Think about the focus at school anyways. You take subjects, right? Life doesn't work in subjects, but you take these subjects, and it's only these 5. If I was like, hey, Mark, dude, when you go to the store tomorrow, you can only go shop from these 2 aisles. You have a very limited number of products to look. You'd be like, what are you talking about? Absolutely not. Hey, by the way, you can only read these 5 books. That's it, man. That's all I'm going to let you read, right? People have a problem with that. We do it in school, and we're like, you can only take math, history, English, learn, and everybody's like, okay, got it, cool. That's how you learn? Great. There's this old saying that I fully believe, man, and I don't remember even who said it, but somebody said something to the effect of, if we started making kids go to school earlier and earlier and earlier, it would only take a generation before parents believed you'd have to send them to school for them to learn how to walk. And I fully believe that. Yeah. Right.
You don't learn how to walk. And you don't learn how to talk.
That's right.
Like you learn it yourself. You self-educate yourself.
That's exactly it.
Through seeing and doing and hearing and over again.
That's it. And it's doing. And people, so here's another term that I hate, right? People look at our school and they'll go, okay, well, it's an alternative school. So I hate that term, because when we grew up, alternative means you're one step away from juvenile hall, right? Like you're about to go to jail. And so this is your last ditch effort. You go to the alternative high school, right? Where it's a bunch of shitheads, right? That's what it meant.
It's like the only alternative.
It's the only,
before something really bad happens.
Before you're locked up, right? Like, so people still use that term alternative. And I hate that. So so we're teaching personal responsibility. We're teaching self-direction. We're teaching character matters. Like, we're teaching ethics are a real thing. We're teaching that. So then what's the alternative, right? What are we the alternative to then, if that's the case, right? And so
and maybe call it solution school.
That's right.
It's not the alternative. It's
how
solution,
adults are supposed to be school, right? And how we've forgotten to be as a society school. It's kind of that, so it's a fun place to be, man.
A friend of mine that I know, she's kind of getting the realization that the school that her daughter was going to maybe not be all like, the most tip-top shape.
Yeah.
And this is because she's like, okay, I can see where my daughter's struggling.
Yeah.
How the hell were all these teachers passing her throughout all these, through all these grades?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it really true that like public schools get paid to just pass kids, or is that something totally like just a conspiracy theory type of thing?
You get paid to have butts in seats.
Yeah.
Right. So you get paid to have kids there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got this young person and then you're going to move that young person somewhere else, or you're going to get them somewhere else to go get help or to get, you're losing money because you're no longer saying they're going to be there, right? And then if you can put them in a special class of some sort where they need extra help, right, you can get extra funding for that too. So it's a money game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a politics game. That's really what it is. It's butts and seats, man.
Yeah, and it's just interesting because I think maybe a lot of parents are kind of realizing like, oh shit, like you're not really paying attention.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's because it's homeschool. But like what you said earlier, it's like, no, now you just see it.
Yeah, dude.
I think that's crazy.
Exactly it.
Yeah.
It's when you're taught, and I'm always the first to say, man, I'm super pro teacher. I'm super pro administrator, because those are good folks, right? For the most part. Of course, you have your scandals and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's douchebags everywhere, but they're, for the most part, they're there for altruistic reasons. They really do want to help. They want to help people out. But you're not taught to work with kids. They're not screening for people who are really good at actually connecting with other human beings. You're in a system and you're taught how to perpetuate the system, right? You don't deviate from the system. It's the status quo. That's what you're taught to do, right? So you can teach any monkey to do that. I've had teachers with PhDs that have worked for me that couldn't teach their way out of a paper bag. But the guides at the schools we have, the majority of them do not have any kind of credential, and that's good. I want it that way because they haven't been jaded by that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so I guess advice for myself, my daughter, this was probably like 3 years ago now. Yeah. She hit me with the question that I didn't expect her to hit me with so soon, but she like was struggling with homework or something. I don't remember exactly what happened, but she just looked at me. She's like, why do I need to learn this if we have Google? And I'm like, you're absolutely right, but I don't have an answer for you. So let's just finish.
No, that
whatever.
Was the answer.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay,
you're absolutely right.
Because I'm like, yeah, everything you're learning right now, unfortunately, like you're probably not going to use it later. I'm like, but I don't know what the answer is. So let's get through this because we have to finish it because we started.
Yeah.
I'm like, and we'll tackle that other question later. So like, what the hell? I mean, I guess that's the answer then.
Dude, that is the answer. And that's been the age old, like, why do we have to do, like, I remember kids asking that when I was in school. Yeah. Why do we have to do this? And it's like, shut your mouth. And we, it's, whatever. There was never a good answer.
Because that's what you do.
Because that's what we need to do, right? Because that's what my boss is telling me to do. Because if the principal walks in right now and you're not doing that, I'm going to get in trouble, right? Like, that's the answer. So yeah, you're right. If you can Google something, what are we doing? Let's spend our time doing something else.
Well, it's also a good, it's a good teaching moment too, because you can ask a kid, say, hey, well, what do you want to know from Google? And they could say something, right? And you can say, okay, well, go look it up.
Totally.
They look it up. They give you information and say, do you believe that?
For sure.
How do you know it's fact?
For sure.
Did you look at multiple articles?
For sure.
Did you YouTube it? Did you check out a couple? Because you're going to really have to go through, like, so it's not as easy as a Google search.
Right.
You're going to have to really, look into it. Like, does God really exist? Or you type in something crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're going to have to do a deep dive. Nobody knows.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
And you can teach kids that, hey, look, sometimes we're not always going to be certain of stuff, but we can get as close to the truth or as close to our beliefs or our truths as we can get.
That's right.
And that's all we could really know.
Go down that rabbit hole and start to decipher between good information and bad information, right? And then once you get what seems like good information, how do you then transform that? How do you use that information to either collaborate with somebody else and create something else? Or, what do you do with that information once you have it? Those are the kinds of conversations. A big part of what we do are Socratic conversations, right, on a daily basis. And this doesn't matter if there's the 5-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, everywhere in between. And so we'll give them a scenario and go, look, here's your scenario. Do you take option A? Do you take option B? Like, let's discuss. And so they learn to have those discussions and have kind of those deep dives into, big topics and not get all butthurt about it, not bring emotion into it, right? Where it's just like, oh, okay, you're a Trump fan, well, I'm a Biden fan, well then cool, we hate each other, right? Like, none of that horseshit. It's like, cool, well, why do you love Trump? That's awesome. Why do you love Biden? That's great. Let's eloquently speak to why. You speak to why. Let's genuinely listen, and let's try to go facts over emotion, and then just see. And at the end of the day, we're going to disagree on some stuff too. Cool. Awesome. High five. Let's go play.
And that kind of stuff is really hard to try to pull up facts on. To try to figure out who's done what and who hasn't done what.
100%, man.
Holy crap.
100%. 100%. So, that's it. And we want to give them that kind of framework and that kind of mindset. And that just develops different adults.
Yeah, and wouldn't you guys agree that that's like a better process for problem solving? Because I just remember when whoever the asshole was that decided that my daughter needs to do Common Core, and I would be like, just do the math, don't backtrack like 10 steps to get it. They said
it's wild.
Yeah, her teacher was like, oh, we do it this way so they can learn how to problem solve. And I'm like, but why are you creating a big problem for them to solve?
Imagine if you and I had to figure out our businesses the same way.
Right.
Imagine that. One of us wouldn't have survived. Like, one of us may have.
Right.
But the likelihood is that neither one of us would probably have anything.
That's exactly right.
If we had to do it the same way.
Yep,
and what you're talking about, that's like, no. Nsima, you're going to do the same way as me, and you do the same way as him, and the same way as him, and the same way as her. And it's like, can I just get, does it matter how I got there? Can I just get to the result?
Dude, and that's the logical train you should go down. Mm-hmm. It's the logical train. And people will go, dude, I can walk anybody down the logical train of public school and traditional schooling is not the ideal, right? We can walk anybody down that, but it's the emotional attachment to it. Like you are emotionally attached to a religion, right? It's the ultimate cognitive dissonance. You can walk people down that and they can be like, yes, yes, yes. And I've had it with parents, walk them down like, yes, 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 great, awesome, cool. My kid's here, and then their kid's there, and their kid's making money, and their kid's making friends, and they're like, they're more responsible at home, and they're like, but their math level is slipping. And it's like, holy shit, like, what do you, it's that emotional attachment to that. Yeah. Right? And then we have all these parents who are like, okay, cool, I can't do your homework. Like, I full on don't understand your homework, right? I feel I don't want to homeschool you because I won't know what to do. So you're saying I went through this whole system right here that then left me feeling ill-equipped to help my own child, right? To do, there's so many logical issues with all that kind of stuff. And again,
once a kid gets past like 5th grade, it's impossible to help them.
It is. Absolutely. For me too, as a career educator with graduate degrees. Right? Like it's impossible. And, going back to that concept of alternative, this this whole way of doing it has only been about like 100 years, 100 plus years, right? Before that, in all of humanity, you did stuff. Mark is the man in town who is the welder, and I'm going to be his apprentice, and I'm going to go in and start welding with him. And eventually, just by doing and being with somebody who knows what they're doing, I'm going to be a welder, right? It's pretty easy. And that's essentially what we're doing now too. It's like, look, start doing this, start building your business. We're also going to have you team up with other people who own businesses or people that are in your fields you're interested in. Start doing this and go.
By the way, welding's really fucking complicated.
It's really hard.
It is really hard.
It's really hard.
It's amazing that like anything gets done. It's unbelievable.
Totally.
But you don't have to know the science of it to be able to do it.
Right.
You know, you don't have to know the temperatures. You don't have to know, you have to cool this thing down, or you learn those things and you burn yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. You don't have to study the history of who was the first welder and what date did he start welding and none of that shit matters. It doesn't matter. Start welding.
Right.
Give
us a little bit of the background on the school. Like, what's the name of the school, and then how did it get started, and was it modeled after anything else?
Yeah, so we're actually part of a global network, and so it's called Acton Academy. So Acton, and that's named after Lord Acton. He's the guy that said, "Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely." A lot of people have heard that quote. And so Acton actually started as an MBA program. There's a master's program, and it started in Texas. And then the founders of that program said, you know what, we want to do they had kids. And so they said, we want to kind of do a K through 12 and let's figure out how we can do this in kind of a K through 12 setting. So they set that up in Austin, primarily for their kids. And they're two of my heroes, man. They're brilliant human beings. So they were running this, and one of the families had to leave and actually move to California. They moved to Southern California, and then they called Jeff and Laura, are the names of the founders, and they called them and they said, hey, we kind of want to do this here too. Would you mind helping us? Like, we'd love to start something up. And so they're like, okay, well, yeah, sure. Like, if you want to do that, let's help. And so that kind of slowly became, it's not a franchise. It's more like a CrossFit kind of thing, right? Where you got all the boxes that have similar language, similar beliefs, similar type workouts, but the owners are the ones that are really putting their DNA into it and say, no, we're going to focus more on this. We're going to do this. They all try to help each other. They collaborate around things, but everybody's doing their different thing too, right? So it kind of grew into this network. So there's almost 200 of us right now globally. We're in like 30 some odd different countries, and it really is a network of people who have come, some of us from education backgrounds, some from business, some like myself from both. And we just decided, look, we want to complain by building something better. So as this model started popping up and doing things, I was actually getting ready to do a TED Talk in 2015 on alternative education models. And so I started looking into who's actually doing this well, because I was always the pariah, and I was in public schools and private schools, and I'm like, hey guys, everybody over here, like all the stuff we're doing is horseshit. Like, we should be doing something different, right? And so I've been speaking out about that forever. So getting ready to do this TED Talk, so I started looking into organizations that I thought were doing things the right way. And so that's how I first found Acton. Went out to Texas, watched a group of middle schoolers run a 2-hour meeting more efficiently than most Fortune 500 companies, and the adult in the room said nothing the entire time I was there. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. So I gave the TED Talk and then started connecting with them and said, look, I'd like to become a part of this network. I want to do this where I am and start building out. So that was about 5 years ago. And so I took a year to build the community while I was still traveling around doing 50, 60 keynotes a year. And took a year to build that up, man. And really was like, hey, if we can get 10 kids, that'd be great. We started out with 55. And now we've got a full campus with a huge wait list, and just purchased our second campus in SAC. And we're going to do 7, 8, 9 campuses out here in this general area.
How is school now because of COVID and stuff?
Good.
I think that last we spoke, you mentioned you're just kind of leaving it up to the parents. There's some people that are distance learning, and some people are coming to school, right?
That's it, man. So, freedom is my favorite F word, right? And so part of knowing the ins and outs of public school and kind of that whole game. Like I said, one of the easiest ways to go to college is don't get a high school diploma, right? Mm-hmm. So same kind of thing. So we set ourselves up from a legal standpoint as we're not a school. We're an educational resource center or professional development center, right? Whatever you want to say, that this is what we are. The kids register as homeschool, and then will come to us to collaborate for things. So from our perspective, we weren't There was no impact on that. We just left it up to the parents. We just say, hey man, what do you guys want to do? Do you feel safe? If you want to stay home and go virtual, we will help you with the virtual stuff. Great. If you would like to come to campus, come to campus. We're not going to, put something up to your kid's head when they come in. We're not going to say 42 feet apart. We're not going to say, 12 masks. We're not going to none of that stuff. What do you want to do? So we're rocking and rolling, man. Full campus, full go.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be a, like for traditional schools, like a temporary thing, or is schools like never going to go back to being the same? As, thinking outside of like mandates and stuff, but as far as like, even like companies like, oh, we're doing just fine working remotely. We don't need all these office buildings now. They're probably going to change forever. Is school going to be something similar?
No, because of that butts in seats. Right. It's that model is still built on having those physical locations. It's still built on having those people there. So that won't change anytime soon. And there's a lot of money invested in.
Wasn't it also really odd that like, I'm very confused. They shut the schools down.
Yeah.
And one of the first things they talked about was getting funding for the schools.
Right.
And I'm like, if they're not operating, how do they need more money?
Right.
But
right.
I don't,
exactly.
Some of the stuff that happens, you're just like,
wait a second.
What's going on here?
100%.
The lights are off. There's no buses.
Lights are off. There's none of that stuff is running. I mean, that's exactly it.
Right.
And we already spend so much more per student than anybody else. It has nothing to do with increasing funding will never be the answer for schools. Schools need more money. They really don't. They need to quit doing stupid shit, right? And they need to rethink the way they're doing everything. It has nothing to do with money. We drive so much better from a result perspective. Like we drive so many better outcomes for much less per student than any of our public schools. And it has nothing to do with, well, there's good schools over here, bad schools, dude. They're all the same. Like I've worked in Stockton and I've worked out in, Roseville, Gangland, Disneyland, right? In California. The schools are the same. The quality of the teachers are the same. There's no good schools means you're in a high socioeconomic area. Period. That's it. So you have parents that provide more opportunities, right? And they provide maybe more of a influence as far as like, hey, you've got to do well, right? And so the kids have better opportunities, so they come in and they test better. That's what labels a good school.
Well, and they never ask the parents. I mean, they might already be asking quite a bit, especially because you pay a good amount in taxes and stuff like that. But
totally.
They never, like they may say, hey, the school needs more computers. And you're thinking, oh, okay, well, I can help with that because it's my kid's school.
Right.
But they never ask you like, hey, Grant High needs, because that would be like, people would scoff at that and be like, why would I pay for
sure,
and no one gets it, but they should be.
Yep.
Like, I think they should be like, because your kids are only in school for so long anyway.
Right.
So if you can assist and help in other ways and help some of the other schools, how do you guys assist and help some people that might be, not able to pay to go to the school?
For sure, man. So that's always the downside of any privately driven organization is the cost, the fact that we don't get government money, right? I mean, so that's always going to be the downside. So we have a few different things we do. So part of it is just the inherent nature of our school, the way we do things. We are focused on helping kids build businesses and build opportunities. So our students are making money. We have students who pay their entire tuition themselves with their businesses.
Wow.
Right? So when you're making that cash, not only are you able to now afford it, what company doesn't want, if some, young 18-year-old comes over here and says, hey, I want to work with you guys. I love what you guys are doing. By the way, these last 6 years, here's my P&L, here's my cash flow sheet. These are the businesses that I've been running. This is what I've been doing. Here are the internships and apprenticeships that I took on. Some of those were paid, by the way, too, right? You're going to want those people in a heartbeat, right? That's way more impressive than I went to college like everybody else, right? So you've got the opportunity for them to do that there. But we also have things like jobs on campus. So we've got an executive chef on campus, right? And he goes in and he teaches culinary skills. So young men are getting valuable skills, right? And young men and women, but we have more boys that are in the kitchen. So they're getting the valuable skills, and then they get they provide the meals to everybody, but then they also have some kickback that goes towards working on campus, right? Goes kickback towards their tuition. ultimately we want to continue. So like anytime we do any kind of consulting, it goes back to the kids. My podcast is all like any sponsorship on the Essential 11 all goes back to the kids. It goes back to the families that we have, so we can help the families that we know are struggling the most, right? This program I'm building with Tim Kennedy, all of that is going back into the kids. As we continue to grow profitability wise, we want to buy, if there's other small businesses in the area that we can purchase, have the kids go run those businesses with our mentorship. So they're getting real experience running real businesses. Profitability goes back into scholarships. So we want to, build those opportunities in as much as humanly possible. I
know some people are wondering, like, what kind of businesses have some of these kids built while they were in school? Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, man. We've got, I saw the cornhole board out there with your face on it, right? With Mark's face on there, which is rad. We've got a young man that builds custom cornhole boards. So he builds them on campus, right? Puts the boards together, does custom wraps and all that kind of stuff. So he's selling those to individuals, to hotel chains, to businesses, right? So he's doing that. He actually just teamed up with 2 other brothers that just came in. So they're expanding because those guys make bike ramps and all kinds of, so they're actually just kind of doing a carpentry business all around for multiple things. So these guys are selling out. We've got a girl that does custom abstract art. And so
I saw that when I was there.
Yeah, she's rad. So she'll do paintings, right? And she'll sell those, but she also has been commissioned to do cars, she does a lot of skateboards and clothing as well. And so she's got her products in 5 or 6 shops around here in Sacramento that are selling her stuff, where she does this custom artwork. She sold a skateboard earlier this year to Tony Hawk. Took it to his California Hall of Fame induction, right? So like that's pretty legit when you can be like, he takes that to his California Hall of Fame induction, has her board up there like that. That's a big deal.
And what a cool thing to support too, when you say, hey, I bought this from this kid, and supports their tuition to go to this school. Like,
that's it, man.
Who doesn't want to be part of that?
Exactly, man. Nobody wants to say no to that. A young lady, middle schooler, that just went and did a pitch to some local boutiques because she makes custom leather jewelry and leather satchels and all this kind of stuff. Her dad does something where he comes home with a bunch of leather scraps, and then she takes and puts all this stuff together.
It sounds like we can get a lot of these kids sewing some slingshots over here. Get a little Nike project.
Dude, it's the best. And here's the deal too. We call it school. It's part of their school. You don't have to pay them anything. Dude, it's great. It's free labor.
Awesome.
Right, yeah.
It's free labor. Like, we can get rid of you said you got 10, 11. Dude, we'll get rid of half your staff. But
that's right.
We'll hook you.
You get 3 or 4 kids for every adult.
For sure. It's great. So yeah, I mean,
for some people listening that might think it's sounds odd, but people do this for private schools as well. Like there's a lot of kids that can't afford private schools.
Yeah.
One of my good friends who's at this very table right now had to do that. He worked at the private school. He wasn't one of the rich kids. He had to work. He had to work for his tuition, basically.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so again, the more we can build out the profitability of that too, and just drive. I mean, we want to go into areas of Sacramento that there's just people that they're just going to struggle to afford something like this. And we want to go because we will, I remember there was a university that was doing a study on, alternative education. And one of the students got a hold of me, and I think they were in Texas somewhere, and he got a hold of me. And so they kind of did this whole case study around us. And he's like, when are you going to go into the inner city? I'm like, dude, as soon as humanly possible. And he's like, I grew up in kind of a rough area. He's like, what do you think? Like, would those kids do well in this kind of environment? Like, dude, they would. So first of all, they just have less opportunity. They are just as much a genius as every kid that we have, period, end of story. I actually think they'll do better and do crush it, because a lot of these kids have a chip on their shoulder too, right? And they're like, look, I'm struggling on something. I'm going to come in and show you guys I can make something myself. One of the biggest downsides also, I think, of privatized education is a lot of kids that come in and whose families can't afford it. I've seen a lot over these last few years. Those kids have this kind of mindset, well, mom and dad will always take care of me, right? Like there's always a safety net.
I saw that when I coached football.
For sure.
You could see who comes from what kind of family. And
for sure,
most of the kids that had kind of quote unquote everything that they need, maybe and then some, and played a lot of video games, like they weren't that into like smashing into each other.
Totally.
But the kid that maybe was neglected a little bit, maybe didn't have the same opportunities, when he had a chance, to hit somebody.
He's getting at it.
Yeah, it was like he was born to do it. You're like,
100%.
whoa.
100%.
Like, hey man, I meant it to hit the guy, but not like that, dude.
That's it.
You blew his ass up.
I love that, dude. And that's, we talk about those kids as being the underserved kids. I think the kids that have too much are our underserved kids, because they're the ones that are going to be mentally handicapped moving forward, right? That's where all the entitlement comes from, is that kind of stuff. So I think these kids will crush it. Yeah, I had a good Ray.
It's hard to meet people that are normal when they come from a lot of wealth.
Totally.
And especially, not necessarily when it's the person's first run of it, but when it's generational, when it's the kids a lot of times are really fucked up.
100%, man. Who had a good was chatting with Ray Care, right, not too long ago, and a mutual buddy, and we had him on, and we kind of chatted for a while.
Man, that guy's fired up,
dude. That dude is fired. Like, he's nuts. He was one of the dudes.
He came right through our screen.
Dude, that's the way he does it. So I actually put out like a disclaimer too. I think our episode with him goes on this weekend. I put like kind of disclaimer too, because he was getting all just fired up, and I'm just like, and I try, our podcast is geared more towards all these young people and stuff too, right? But I just found myself as I'm sitting there talking to him, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, dude. So that stuff that I don't normally say either, right? And I'm just like, we're just like, yeah, fuck this and fuck that, and we're just like, we're just super fired up, dude. And it was hilarious. But then we ended up talking again this weekend too, and we're just like, dude, we end up kind of going in this rabbit hole of like, we're both super thankful for some of the rougher things. I'm thankful for, I don't have a relationship with my dad right now, right? But I'm super thankful that I had the relationship that I did. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that there was a chip that was put on my shoulder. I'm thankful for the lessons I learned. I'm thankful for the good stuff that he did, and the kind of the anti-hero things that I can learn. Like, I'm thankful for that. Him too. He's like, look, I had he told you guys he had a horrible situation, right? But he's like, dude, I'm grateful for that, because it gave me the fire to be the dude that I am.
Also,
right?
Maybe that's all your dad knew.
And that's
all. Maybe that's all he knew. Like, maybe he didn't know,
dude,
that he could have taught you the same lesson through having you shovel snow or something like that.
That's exactly it.
I mean?
That's exactly it, man. And that's why I think it's there's almost never a reason to have ill will. And if we can teach our kids that early on too, because everybody's viewing things out of their goggles, so I have no ill will towards my dad. I wish him nothing but the best. He's battling his own demons, man. And I learned a lot through that, and I want him to get past those demons, and I hope he does, and I want that for everybody, man. And if we can teach kids early on to battle their own demons and to not worry about other people that are battling theirs, dude, man, it makes a big deal.
Thing that CT Fletcher shared with us that I always thought was like just wild. He was like, try loving people that hate you, or try loving people that have hate in their heart. He's like, it's the hardest thing to do, but he's like, it's easy to love people that love you, or it's easy to like people that like you, but he's like, try it when they hate you, and it can help you to live a more peaceful life. It's nearly impossible to do. I understand it's very hard to do, but that's, if you can figure out a way to do it, then you're getting on the right track.
You're on the right track. And I think, dude, that's where you said the key word, man, is that peace. It's the peace. The peace of mind is like, it doesn't matter. You got a million people who love you, a million people who hate you, and neither one of them are your psyche is not dependent upon either of those. I don't have to crave these. I also don't have to fear this or be angry at this. Like, I'm just peaceful. I'm doing what it is that I think I need to do, and there's integrity. I can look myself in the mirror, and family loves me, dude. Life's good, man. It's all good. And that's what I want for all these kiddos too.
It seems like you guys have entrepreneurial spirit at the campus. Yeah. And can you share some of those principles with us? What are these things that you try to teach some of these kids? I'm sure it matters what age they are, but in general, like, what are some things you try to teach these kids?
Dude, really good question. So, and people say all the time, like, well, you guys just want to build entrepreneurs, and that's definitely not it. I don't think, entrepreneurship, and it's a hard road, and I don't think everybody is cut out for that necessarily, or that should even want to do that, right? So, but I think the entrepreneurial spirit of looking to how do I add value, how do I, continue to grow and move things forward, right? I think that benefits anybody. So that's really, we tell our kids that are there, you will be successful with these two things: work hard, treat people well. Like, if you do those two things, you are willing to work hard, and that just means you're willing to push it. You want to grow, right? It's that growth mindset sort of deal, and you're going to treat people the right way along the way. Generally, things are going to work out good for you. Now, it's easier said than done. And so that's where we put in all of these systems to give them agency early on to actually have adult conversations, to actually hold the line for each other on the character part of that. Character matters. Personal responsibility matters. We are very anti-victimhood. period. I don't care what your background was. You do not get to play the victim.
So maybe the kids aren't necessarily telling on each other, but they're saying, hey, that's not the way we behave.
It's that. Exactly. So they operate on covenants and contracts with one another, right? So they create contracts within their studio, and studio just means it's kind of this mixed age group, but there's a general contract for everybody that's there. And so that studio contract is generally 7 or 8, things that they come up with, and it always boils down to promises of, I'm going to be my best self and I'm going to hold you accountable to being your best self. This is how we act here in a professional environment. It boils down to that basic stuff. It doesn't matter if it's the 5-year-old doing it or the high schoolers doing it, right? And then they know they actually have, not only do they have a voice in it, we don't want to, as adults, have the voice at all. I would rather have the kids sitting there having a conversation and you and I are trying to talk and Mark keeps interrupting, and then it's one of us. It's like, hey, so Mark, real quick, man, you signed the contract. You promised, you're not going to talk over other people, man. Can you, whatever. Right? Yeah, exactly. and we've got systems in place. So where if you keep doing it, there's actually repercussions there too, including you might end up having to go. The kids can get rid of other kids.
You're off the team.
You are off the team. You're off the team. And then of course we have fail safes in play in case there's somebody who wants to take a power trip of like, cool, let's see who I can get rid of today, right? Like we have systems in place too, so that if that person is doing that, they get rid. So you put these structures in, especially early, and it just ends up being the way they talk. The kids that have, I've got 9-year-olds that have never gone anywhere else. They've only been with us. And it's hilarious to hear them have these conversations. My daughter and her best friend, they'll be like, hey, what you're doing, this is not your best work. Right? Wow. Like, this is not your best work. Like, I know you can do so much better than that. And what's cool is the other kid will be like, you're right. Can you help me on the, and it's like, cool. Yeah. All right, here you go. And then like, all right, good. And they're done. There's nobody's butt hurt. Nobody's fine. It's just like, boom, here's what it is, because this is the standard that we want to achieve. And it's not just a standard of
look
work.
at it like, you happy with that?
Are you happy with that? Yeah. Is this the best you can do? Because I've seen you do better.
Just picturing a 9-year-old say that is the funniest thing to me for some reason.
Dude, and it's real.
Oh my God.
And it's real. And that doesn't need adults, right? We had, during this whole COVID thing, at the initial thing, we went virtual, everybody virtual for a little bit too, right? And I've worked with so many schools and school districts all over the world. And so I had I had teachers, I had administrators, I had superintendents that were calling me from everywhere, just going, what do we do? Like, what do we do with all this stuff? Like, and they were looking more for systems. Like, how do you do this at home and keep everybody on track virtually and all this kind of stuff? I'm like, I can help you with the systems part. But the big part is you're not teaching the students how to self-direct, actually how to not have the adults there, but still push themselves forward, hold each other accountable. That's what you guys aren't. That's what you guys are missing. So it's not going to be the same. They're like, no. We do a good job of that, right? We just need to get them some iPads in their hands, and then we're going to be okay. And I'm like, okay, cool, man. And I was talking to a superintendent from another state, and I said, let me show you. I was driving back into my driveway. I said, dude, let me just show you what I'm talking about. Let's get on FaceTime. So we got on FaceTime, and I flipped my screen around, and I creeped into my house, and I walked in. And my 9-year-old's on her computer, and she's got her headphones on, and she's like, no. And it was her and 2 other 9-year-olds, and they were having a conversation around the difference between fixed and variable costs and sunk costs and all. Like, this was the conversation they were having. And so I'm showing him, and he's like, oh, okay, that's kind of a high level conversation. I'm like, and there's no adult involved in this conversation. There's not even a teacher monitoring this. It's like, that's the difference between what we're doing and what you're doing. That's the difference. I always tell people our ideal day on campus, and this isn't just some like esoteric bullshit. This is really what we push for. Our ideal day is that none of the adults show up to campus at all. The kids don't notice, and they don't care. Nothing changes. That's the ideal.
Yeah. Mark, Andrew, and I, we've had this conversation before, and I want to know first off if you think this is like really legit first off, and then also it seems that you guys are just taking a totally different approach. When I went to school, it was 8 to 4.
Yep.
Right. And jobs are like 9 to 5. I get picked up. We'd have teachers that looked over everything we do. We have a little lunch break where we eat our food, and we'd be in these classrooms where we're looking to somebody like a manager to tell us what we got to do and tell us what we have to learn. And it just seems like normal schools are just preparing kids to go get a normal government job in the workforce,
right,
and stay there for a really long time because it's what they're used to. Are we right?
Yeah, 100% on purpose.
Okay.
This is all on purpose, right? And so that's part of without getting all, I don't want to get like where it sounds conspiratorial or whatever, but the reality is the people who brought this model over, that was kind of the MO, is you get people smart enough to follow directions, but not quite smart enough to really think for themselves, challenge it, want to go outside it, maybe do something better, right? It's kind of that general sort of mentality, and we've just continued to maintain that. So you're absolutely right. Like, we're continuing to push people. So that's one of the biggest downfalls, is that you've got all these 18-year-olds that have always had that. They're still asking another human being, like, can I go to the bathroom right now? And that other person has the ability to go, no. You're like, okay, got it. And then they graduate, and the next day they're supposed to make all the decisions for their life, right? When they've never made a freaking decision, including when I get to go to the bathroom, right? So we're handicapping them from the get-go. And so we're creating all these kids who go into, even at the end of college, go into their job if they're lucky enough to get one. What do you want me to do? Give me the rubric so I can get my A, right? I'll play that game, and as soon as I get done, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait for you to tell me what to do next, because I don't understand how my role plays into the bigger role of everything, right? And so we've created all these handicapped individuals, and it's one of the biggest things that I hear from CEOs, from hiring managers all over the world. It's that, like, we're playing with, like, come in and help. Lockheed Martin has me work with what they call their developing leaders program. It's all these 22-year-olds that are out of Harvard and Stanford and MIT, and they're all way friggin' smarter than me, and they're like, hey, we want to fire all of them. We want to get rid of all of them because they don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to work. They're all really smart, but they suck. So can you help us not fire all these kids? Like, that's it. And that's what we're creating in mass still. And the more we standardize and the more we focus on just 2 subjects for 1 test, because that's where our money's coming in, the more we're handicapping these kids to think that exact same way. So yeah, you're not wrong at all.
I think a lot of times school and just standard education teaches you to maybe question or poke holes in things, but then not have a solution, and to place a ceiling on things a lot of times. Because I get this a lot, where I might say something and then I would hear, well, the problem with that is, and I'm like, okay, if we're going to point out problems, I mean, we can have a, we can
do
talk
that all day.
Yeah, we can talk all day. There's a lot of problems with a lot of things, but if I'm trying to Elon Musk this thing, I'm trying to make it better.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe you brought up the problem, but can you also see, okay, you might recognize that as a problem, but what would be a nice solution to that?
100%.
Or what can we poke holes in it to where we get thinking about what the solutions would look like?
That's exactly it, is going from that solution standpoint, right? And then also understanding that as things change, the solution may morph too, right? So one of the things we talk about is our kids, not only do they know where to find answers, not only do they know how to create and look for a solution, but they can also go, okay, well, right now I need to actually kind of unlearn this. Is whatever this is no longer relevant to society or to the answer or whatever. So now the solution looks different, and the solution needs to morph, right? At this point too. I mean, this didn't exist 10 years ago, and 10 years from now, that's a pager, right? Like, that's so cool. So then what do we do with that? So don't get too tied to this. What's the functionality? But as there becomes a better solution, then or a better tool, then let's bring that tool in so that we can create a solution that looks a little bit different. But it's that solution thinking, right? But people like to chill in the problems, right? We like to sit back and watch Tom Brady and be like, oh my God, I wouldn't have made that pass. Didn't you see that guy coming over the top? Like, there's no way, right? And we're going to sit there and tell the GOAT.
Tom Brady's our football player.
Oh,
yeah.
I have to fill him in.
Gotta help him out.
Football.
Yeah, close. Yeah.
Seahawks. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, we love to do that, man. And but it is coming with a solution makes a big, and we'll get it all the time. Parents, everybody went to school, so everybody knows how to run a school. Everybody knows how. Like, this is what you should be doing. I'm like, okay, cool, got it. Thank you. 10-4.
Yeah. Are there grade levels at Acton?
What grade are you in?
So so here's what I'm thinking, because my daughter's in 7th grade right now, and you were talking about opening up a new school in Sacramento. Checking out the website, it's scheduled for 2021. By then she would be in, math, I think 9th grade-ish.
It carried the 2.
Yeah. So that's 9th grade of traditional school, and then if she were to join Acton, that'll be the first time she experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
What would that transition look like for someone that's in that situation?
It's a really good question. It depends. There's no blanket statement, right? Because there's no blanket statement for humanity in general, right? So, we have kind of as close to a generalization as we can. We say if somebody's got a certain amount of years in a traditional system, it'll take them maybe that many months before they start to learn how to self-direct. And that's held relatively true, but it depends on the kid and it depends on the parent too. I mean, it really depends on the parent, right? If the parent is on board speaking the same language, the transition can be much shorter, but it is way harder to come in as a freshman. It's way harder than if you were a 5-year-old, because you have to unlearn. You got to unlearn all of that programming. You have to unlearn waiting for somebody to tell you exactly what to do, when to do it. You have to unlearn the fact that, wait a second, I have a voice. Wait a second, it's not about just taking a class and having subjects. I'm supposed to go create right now. I'm supposed to go create. And if I find something I really like or that I'm good at, they actually want me to be obsessed about that and just go become a ninja on that. And we don't give a shit about your SAT score right now because you're rock star right here. Like, go get this. It's a different mindset, So it's really hard if you come in at 5 years old and they just go, okay, well, this is the way it is. It's a whole nother game. Not saying it can't be done. And we've got kids that come in at all different ages, but there is a vetting process, and there's no perfect vetting process too. But it's like, we'll have our info session, kind of an open house next week. Right. And so we'll do one a month, and we'll have 70, 80 families that'll come in and sit in the auditorium. And within the first 5-10 minutes, my goal is to get everybody to leave. All of them. I'm like, most of you guys, your kids would probably be fine. Most of you guys will not. You will not be able to get around the emotional baggage. Here's kind of some of our beliefs. College is great. If you want to learn how to play the game, we'll get your kid in, help your kid get into college. If they want to do the work, that's fantastic. For 90% of them, it's a dumbass idea to do. I'll throw that out. Math does not matter. Just try to, as much as I can just kind of irk them and just see how uncomfortable I can get them, and just try to get them to go early. It's the hardest thing is to find the parents that are going to support that.
Yeah. Placing really kids in certain grades, though, it probably doesn't, you're probably not too concerned about it. They can probably go one way or the other. Yeah. They can probably have a 2 or 3 year age difference. And
they do. And in their studios, there's multiple ages, and it's more social emotional is the biggest part. And then, some academic ability plays into it a little bit, but it's that social emotional part of it that matters the most.
There's nothing better than hanging out with an older kid when you're young. They're so
for
cool.
Sure.
Someone who's 11 when you're 9, they're like, throw the football further and do all this stuff.
They're like,
so rad. This guy's awesome
for sure. But then there's also the downfall of the 11-year-old. We're taught in regular school, if you're 11 and you're not, well, I get to automatically look down on you because you're 9, right? I get to squash, you are not, right? And then I will automatically revere you when you're older, even if you're a complete douchebag. And our kids mix so much. My boy, who's there now, and he's in the youngest studio. He's just under 5, and he'll come home and be like, okay, so my friend Cameron, and I'm like, oh, Cameron in your studio? He's like, no, older I'm like, oh, the 18-year-old Cameron, that's your friend. Got it. Yeah. And they just, and they'll throw them like, hey, Cameron, dude, you're not following the contract right now. You'll have a 5-year-old call out an 18-year-old, be like, dude, you're being a douchebag. Don't do that. And that's legit. And if they can legitimately point to it, so we just want them to have that experience, because the reality is, so I'm 40, and if you guys aren't exactly 40, then we shouldn't be hanging out right now. We shouldn't be talking, and what grade does that make us? And all that, none of that stuff plays out in life. It's only in the school game. It doesn't make any sense.
So there is an actual contract that kids sign?
Oh, there's a legit contract. They create the contract, and then so at the end of our first, we kind of go in these waves of 5 or 6 weeks on, and then about a week or 2 off, and we kind of go in these. And at the end of every session, we do what's called an exhibition. So we invite family, friends, whatever. You can see what they've created. You can see what they've done. We want to hoot and holler, support the kids with all the stuff. And then at the end of that first session, they have a ceremony where they go through and sign it. The parents take an oath, and they sign a parent contract of basically I'm here to support you. The kids and the parents make promises to each other. We make a big deal out of it, so that we don't have to worry about the drama of it. They legit sign the contract. They don't have to, but if they don't get to stay.
So that brings up my next question with the parenting. Totally asking for a friend, I promise. Have you ever dealt with a student that lives in 2 separate homes when one parent's totally on board and the other one's just maybe not so much?
100%. Yeah. 100%.
And how do you
2020, dude. So it's
how do you guys get through that?
We got a lot of the split.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no blanket answer on that either.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. I'm a big proponent for let's talk early. Let's like get the conversation out of the way. I have told parents, like, hey, you're clearly not on board with this. So either you've got to not be a part. You can't talk about this, or this is going to mess up the opportunity for your kid. If it's really messing with the way the kid, handles things and it's making the kid conflicted, that's the biggest thing. And it may end up not working out, for the family, which is unfortunate. We got to have the parents on board. They've got to be speaking that same language. So it ends up being tough. Luckily, it doesn't happen too much for the most part. Even if the family split, the parents are usually generally both okay and on board there. But if there's anything that's affecting that kid, it's going to be a heartache. It's going to be a struggle. And ultimately it's not good for the kid, and that's what we're looking out for is them, no matter what.
What do you think is the toughest thing that you guys face? How do you maybe dispel some of the misconceptions about your place, your facility? I have to admit, going into that environment and seeing what it was and not having a good understanding of it, I'm immediately thinking like religious or cultish or any of these kinds of things, because I've never seen anything like that before, so I don't know anything about it. So what are some of the things that you guys face that are tough, that make things harder for you guys?
Well, it's hard to get people to join the cult, right? And some of the ceremonies, some of the sacrifices right up front, like people aren't necessarily down. What's cool is because we don't have a religious affiliation, like the conversations around religion are really in depth.
The whole time I was there, I was waiting for you to like say something like, to get to sucker me and Steven into like, going to your church or something.
That's hilarious. Yeah. There is we bought the building in Roseville from a church. They still operate out of there, but it's a different.
And that's what you said in the beginning. You're like, don't worry about this stuff. I was like, yeah, sure. I know.
Sure, dude. I get it.
You're going to club me over the head on the way out with a Bible.
Oh, that's so funny, dude. Yeah. No, there's no religious affiliation at all. No cultist affiliation. God, dude, now I'm wondering how many people walk in and they think that now.
Yeah, right.
They come in and
don't worry about
that's all. Yeah,
don't worry about these prayers and things.
It's all good. Oh, and let's go. I'm gonna take it. Here's a podcast room. Here's the adrenochrome room. Like, right? Yeah, dude. No, there's none of that going on. The biggest myth is that because we put academia, what I think is in its place. Right. And I'm not saying it's completely irrelevant, but it's somewhat irrelevant, or it's moderately relevant, that and because we say college isn't necessary for everybody, that it is a place that then is for somebody who's troubled or somebody who has special needs. And we're saying, no, this is a place where we actually believe kids are geniuses and we actually want them to go out and like, it's literally the indoctrination around school. That's really all it is. It's that emotional attachment. Religion's a perfect example. If 92% of our population grew up hardcore Catholic, and I'm coming in going, I've got a different religion now, that means you need to kind of like stop revering the Vatican. Like there's issues there, right? There's pedophilia there. And they're like, yes, we see it, but still my kids need to go to mass. Right? You're breaking people from this religion of this is what school looks like. It is 95% of our struggle. And so it's a long tail game of a proof of concept thing. It really is. And I think CrossFit again is kind of a good example of that. Whether you like it, you don't, you love it, you hate it, like that's irrelevant. The reality is they changed the way people viewed fitness. Some people have done really, really well with it. Right. And then you've got your other businesses that are now having their CrossFit style classes out of it. Right. And it's shifted some things. That's what we're doing. It's the solution. We're going, hey, look, here's a solution. Here's a better way that's more relevant for the 21st century. And proof of concept over time. Now it's going to, other schools are going to have to follow suit. Public schools won't. Too much money. So does this sound right? Like, even though you sell quote unquote school and you sell education, it may not even really be that relevant or important. But but you do need to learn. You need to learn shit. Sure. You need to learn. You absolutely need to learn, right? There's a difference between education and school. Right. Yeah. That's the difference. You're always learning something. Right. you know, learn it. And you walk around here and learn what you guys are doing. See what you guys are doing. Like, that's learning. We have a conversation. I mean, that's learning. You tell stories. That's learning. Grandma tells you a story. You're learning. You get on your bike and you fall down. You are learning. Like, you're always learning. That is just the default state of the human being, you know, is learning. But there's a difference between education and school. School implies a very narrow system. We're saying, look, like, this is a buffet. You've got all the food available to you in the world. Try it all. Try all the food. And then when you figure out which one you really like the best, let's hone in. Let's look at all the variations of that. Let's learn to build a life around that because you love that.
You want to stay at the dessert bar the whole time? You're more than welcome to.
Stay at the dessert bar and make a life around the dessert bar. Dude, that's it, right? Whereas schooling is more about, no. There's these 4 foods right here. They're all about as good for you as Mickey D's, and you're going to stay right there.
Yeah.
That's all you get to eat. And then all of a sudden that's going to make life work out. It's horseshit.
You know, you were saying that, like when Andrew was talking about bringing Jasmine in, you said that you kind of base where or what part, like classes that these kids are in based off of like social and emotional skills.
Yeah.
I was curious first off how you kind of judge that, but I was also curious because people are probably thinking this, like, what if my kid currently has bad grades? Do you guys even do grades?
Yeah.
I'm guessing probably not.
Yeah, we don't. So there's a mix of,
I mean, grades as in like A through F.
As in A through F kind of deal, right? Yeah. So from an academia standpoint, so we'll utilize a lot of open source systems. So things like Khan Academy, right? So we know Sal very well, and Sal's a great dude. And so he's building a very comprehensive network of things that you can self-direct your own learning from an academic standpoint, right? So we'll use Khan Academy. We'll use programs like Dreambox, Lexia, all of these kind of self-directed, almost gamified things for academia. Inherently built into those, you've got to pass. You've got to show mastery, right? Like, you've got to pass a certain course. You've got to do a test. You've got to do that. We're more concerned about taking a step back foundationally, going, okay, so you're in this particular unit right now. What does your week look like? How do you want to schedule out your week, and how much Khan Academy do you want to put in there? And you're like, okay, by the end of this week, part of my goals are I want to get through, 3 skills in Khan. Cool. Awesome. Let's put down those 3 goals. When are you going to do that? When are you going to map that out in your schedule? We're more concerned about helping the kids do that. And then at the end of the week, go, okay, cool. Did you get to your 3 skills? You're like, yeah, I actually got 4. Cool. So next week, if you want to keep doing that, should we make your goal 4? Like, is that right? Or was something super easy? Like, what does that look like? Or you're like, no, I got 2. Cool. Okay, you got 2. Did you set your goals too high? Or were you dicking around? Were you like, what does that look like? That self-awareness piece. So then next week, how much Khan do you want to put in there, right? So we layer in the academic courses like that, along with the schedule of the Socratic Conversations, along with projects from an individual side so this is where we deviate from the grades thing, right? An individual side or a collaborative side. So my daughter right now is working on, she wanted to do like an interior design and a home design sort of thing, right? So she worked on a program where she created a virtual design of a house, and then created a physical model of that same house, and then wrote something on why she designed the house the way it was, why this is her dream house, why she thought this was like, that was it. If she did her best stuff, she modeled it after, somebody who had done something before her, she did her best work. Who are we to go, okay, well, did you do, like, forget the, the subjectivity of a grade, right? Like, she wanted that, and she had a time frame in which to do it and have it done so that she could exhibit it too. We get the high stakes of, she knows now her parents, other parents are going to come in and see that work. That's where the feedback really comes in. Forget the A through F.
I was going to say, do people
real
get to,
feedback?
People get to ask questions.
People get to come in and ask questions.
There's like is there a hole in the roof?
Why'd you do it? Exactly. What'd you do? Why'd you do this? Right. Yeah. And that's real kind of feedback. That's what those exhibitions are for.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the way the world works. Your business gets feedback on whether or not you make money and stay in business. Like, that's your feedback. You don't get a grade, right? Your feedback in a relationship works on, does my wife stay with me? Right? Like, do we get along?
Barely.
Right? Barely. Exactly. Yeah. Like, but that's the feedback. It's not, I don't give, we're coming up on our anniversary this month, and I'm not gonna be like, okay, what did I get? She's like, you got a B+ in husbandry this year, and this is like, that's what, so it's real feedback there. And then the collaborative projects, again, that have that exhibition attached to it. Mm-hmm. So that's where we expose them to things that they may not have been. So the individual projects they're choosing and going, ooh, this looks interesting. And this is where that network comes in handy, because we've got hundreds, right? And we just go, here, what do you guys want to do? We'll get the materials, like, what do you guys want? And they're like, ooh, we'll take this one. We'll take this one. We'll take this one. We'll do our academia in the morning, and we're going to tackle our individual projects later, and have our time frame. So we know we've got to actually get some shit done, because people are going to come see it. And then we're also going to expose them to some other discipline. And that's going to be a collaborative where the three of us have to produce something. And again, have that same time frame and a little bit of that real world work sort of mentality of like, oh, we got a time frame. We got to get something out, get a product out.
Yeah.
What are the hours of operation then?
So we'll open our doors at 8, and kids can come in and do what they want to do. They can get to work. We'll have, different things going on at 8 o'clock from sometimes yoga, sometimes PE, sometimes they can just play and do
yoga,
right? Do what they want to do. Yoga. Yeah, man. Go in there and stretch, and a lot run by students too. I will have a high school senior coming in and just, doing yoga for all the kids in various classes. So, but then the morning meetings for all of them start at 9. And so that literally is a meeting. And again, that's little kids, older kids, everybody in between. They're meeting with their studio. And that starts with a standing up, good morning, shaking hands, learning to look each other in the eye, like, that kind of stuff. And then they'll jump into a Socratic conversation. They'll end the day at 3. But then again, we're open for a while afterwards. So there might be another like culinary class going on. There's various groups that come in and rent the facility out, and kids can get involved in helping those. We've got a lot of political groups that come in and like to use our space, because we have a nice space. And we'll have high school kids that will help them run their stuff. And so when people come in, they're like, hey, we would like to rent out your building for this event. How much does it cost? I'm like, well, what's fair? What do you think's fair? What can you guys afford? And they'll say, okay, we can afford this. I'm like, cool. How many kids do you need to help you run all of this, help you run the sound, the AV, the tech? And they're like, okay, we need these 2 kids. I'm like, cool. So then that money right there, you split it up. That's their pay. You pay them directly. Don't pay us. Pay the kid. Pay the kid that's out there working. So yeah, it's cool.
How do you deal with people being late or people not showing up? Is that something that's like usually in their contract, and the other people just kind of point back to the contract and say, hey,
yeah,
that's not the way we behave around here.
Yeah, the kids hold the time, the being late thing, the kids hold, they decide that, but they hold that pretty hard line on that. They'll hold it harder than a lot of times the adults would. They'll hold that and be like, dude, why are you late? And maybe don't let you in.
You miss it for the day.
You miss it. You miss out on it. Yeah, you miss the meeting. Like you miss what's going on. And if we have, somebody there as a guest speaker, entrepreneur, or whatever, like you miss it. You got to stay out. And if you didn't come, the way we all decided yesterday, we were going to dress in a particular professional way because this person coming in, that's the CEO or whatever, like, and you didn't come in, you came in sweats, sit outside. They'll hold those, they will hold those lines. We don't have the butts in seats kind of thing. So if you want to go on a vacation with the family, like, awesome, go on the vacation with the family. Just do it from a work standpoint of communicate with your team. If we're collaborating on a project, I'm going to go on vacation with my family. I got to let you guys know because you guys are my partners. So I got to make sure I'm not screwing you guys over. Right. So it's just like work. It's a workspace for kids is what it is.
Right.
Do these kids follow the concepts of weekends? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how like in school, you have school Monday through Friday, but Saturday and Sunday you have a break, just like work.
Yeah.
Do they do things on the weekend too? Do you guys have things for them to do, or do they just kind of like?
We don't necessarily have things for them to do. We're not assigning homework.
Yeah.
But a lot of them will do things on their own because it's a job, right? It's their job. And a lot of them, the majority of them actually like their job. Like they like it, right? The kids actually want to be there. My kids aren't excited for weekends. And we've got I'm like, oh, are we hard to live with, dude? Really? On your little ranch with your horses? Like, does this suck? Right? But they're like, but we just want to be there. So the kids actually like it. So a lot of them will take their projects home and they'll do stuff over the weekend because it's fun. It's part of what they do, Yeah. Yeah. Which is cool. Wow. Isn't that how we're supposed to build a life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like where the day itself doesn't necessarily matter. We just enjoy what we're doing and who we're doing it with. That's the point, man.
You've mentioned studios a couple of times.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a mixed age. So from a social emotional standpoint, right? If we're talking about these Socratic discussions, 5-year-olds are going to have a discussion that looks one way versus obviously a 10-year-old or an 18-year-old, right? And so their studios that they start the day with, There's a studio that's got 4, 5, and 6 year olds. This one's got like 7, 8, 9, maybe 10-ish. This one's got 10. So it's kind of breaks it up that way. And that's really just for the conversations and for the collaborative projects. Other than that, they end up mixing all day long, but it's for those, for those things. One of our, our middle schools last year had a great Socratic conversation around George Floyd. And that was their idea. They wanted to bring that to the table, and they wanted to say, hey, does systemic racism actually exist? Is this a real thing? And if it is, what do we need to do? Right. So they had a fantastic conversation around that. That's not anything I'm gonna have the 5-year-olds in, right? They're not there yet, for the most part. So that's why the differentiation in the studios, but then throughout the day, as they're doing their individual projects and stuff, they're mixing nonstop.
And then you said earlier, like, oh, you can't, like, through life, you can't just say like, oh, I'm going to study this one subject. Like, I can't work that one subject. So do you guys have like a curriculum, or like, how does that work? Like,
you can study one subject. I'm saying, like, life doesn't work in subjects.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
You're going to study one thing, like, get at it. So yeah, we expect them to do at a certain amount of work, but they can decide what that looks like, right? Like, everybody's taking on a collaborative project every 5 or 6 weeks. You're taking that on with other people you're working on that period. The rest of that, you are deciding what that looks like from an individual standpoint. Do you want to focus all on academia? You can. If you want to do that, you can. We're not going to lecture you, but we're going to teach you how to get open sources and figure that out. So we got kids that take classes through Stanford and BYU and all that kind of stuff right now because they're signed up through those. So they'll go rent one of our offices out, and they'll go in and they'll sit down and they'll take their live classes. You can do academia for sure. You can do that all day long. You can also do some of those individual projects. We have hundreds to choose from. So you can do those and decide, I'm going to do like 3 individual projects over these 5 or 6 weeks. I'm going to do 3 more on this. Like, you decide, right? What does that look like for you? You can mix and match. All of that's cool. The only thing that's not cool is if you act like a douchebag at any point during that, then you got to go. Or if your parents are douchebags. Then
it probably wasn't hard to align with Gary Vee, since so much of what you teach and preach seems like it aligns with him anyway.
100%. Yeah, it was the first time I chatted with him. He's like, dude, tell me more about the school. We were actually on his IG, doing an IG live on his, and he goes, tell me more about this school. Like, what is it that you're doing? So I explained just a little bit, and he, in true Gary Vee fashion, like slams his hand on the table. He's like, that's a school I would have fucking gone to, right? Like, and then I was like, yeah, man. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, so we've gotten, we did an event last year, the No Safe Spaces event, where we had teamed up with Prager and Dave Rubin and some of those guys, and put on this really cool event. And Gary gave us a kind of a shout out for that, and kind of did a little promo piece for us. He's like, dude, I wish I had this kind of school as a kid. I wish I had this kind of event as a kid. Like, you guys got to go. So he'd done some stuff for that. And then he's helping us with a summer project for next summer. We're going to do kind of a almost a reboot of like The Apprentice, right? Remember Donald Trump's kind of Apprentice? We're going to do that in the Sacramento area for teens. And so just bring teens into the Roseville campus, kind of do this like 2-week, like an apprentice camp, where they're going to be doing real challenges around that and be able to win real money, kind of stuff. So yeah, he's a big, it just makes sense. Like I said, it aligns. A big
supporter, right?
Yeah. It aligns.
I like what you're doing, because I think that, the schools aren't going to change, well, even if they did, it would just be hard to get all of them moving in the correct direction.
For sure.
They just have always been the same. America is really strange. It's a really strange place. Like, shit was set up so good. Yeah. But it was set up a really, really long time ago.
Yeah.
And we haven't changed anything. And Joe Rogan actually did a sketch on it one time in his comedic routine, where he was like, he was asking people, like, he was I guess he was like one of the guys that wrote the Declaration of Independence or whatever, and he came back like into the future, and he was like, so like that what'd you guys work on, with the Constitution and stuff, and they were like, oh, well, we haven't changed anything. He's like, you fucking kidding me? I wrote that shit with a feather, and I was high as hell. It's like,
that's awesome.
We just haven't really had a lot of there was great ideas that were set up then, and there's a lot of things that maybe when they wrote those things, maybe they didn't realize that America was going to kind of get into, quote unquote, policing the world and various things. And so it gets to be very complicated on how the hell we're supposed to act today, how we're supposed to do things today. Even the school system, I would say the school system was set up great for many, many years, for 20 years, 30 years. Yeah, for what it needed.
Yeah.
The system that my dad went through, and a lot of people went through, of going to school and then going to college, it seemed to work.
Yeah.
For many Americans. Unfortunately, it didn't work for a lot of other Americans who were discriminated against, but it did work to help build America to a certain extent, to a certain point.
Totally.
And it's broken.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore. Cotton gins works too.
Right.
You know, like nobody gives a shit about those anymore. Model T was great. Now it's that's it.
It only goes 40 miles an hour.
That's exactly right. So things,
inefficient.
like you said, things change. And so, the fact that we're so reluctant to do, part of it is a human nature thing. It's the comfortability, thing. You get very comfortable in your complacency of just doing the same thing day in, day out, not pushing yourself. There's a you get comfortable. That's part of it. And then part of it is when big money gets a hold of, and big politics and big agendas get a hold of anything, and there's a whole lot of money, and there's a whole lot of reasons, there's a whole lot of control that's kept because we don't change. Well, shit. Pearson's making more than, like Tom Brady plays for the Seahawks, right? He's a football player for the Seahawks.
Running back, right?
So running back, yes. See, you're good, man. You're paying attention, right? So, but
Smack the shit.
I know.
And that's definitely not part of our contract. So we're gonna kick you out. We're gonna kick you out of the cult.
Abuse.
We're gonna kick you out of the cult. Abuse is part of the cult, but that particular abuse is not part of the cult.
Bruise right there.
Caffeine and the mind bullet, they mix together.
Yeah, dude, and you're in trouble.
Overreacted.
Yeah, dude, that's it.
Shoot.
Hey, it's better than like a leg sweep or an arm bar or something, right?
Good call.
It could have been a lot worse.
Good call. I don't remember what the hell I was saying. I was just gonna Pearson, right? That makes all the books. Like they make the books, and then the test prep materials for your tests after, and then your study materials, the test for the test that come out of the books, and all this kind. They make all of this. They make more money than any NFL team in a given year. They trump everybody, right? By creating all of this kind of stuff. That's what I'm saying. There is no financial incentive for them to change. Why would they want that to change, right? And so there's a lot of lobbyists, and there's a lot of things pushing to keep things exactly the same. Money's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. So you're right.
I think one of the big things that is really awesome to me about all of this is the mindset that kids get, because
that's it.
I'm 28, so I have a lot of friends that are around that same age, and it's like they don't have the mindset where I guess not doing well at something or failing at something is an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
It's more so when you fail at something, it's like you're just not good at it. You're gonna suck at it.
Yeah.
There's really no reason to keep going. Let's switch to something else.
Right.
And it sounds like all these kids, they're great with criticism. Like when you told me about that 9-year-old, it's like, I don't think that's your best work. Like,
totally.
You tell that to somebody now, they're like,
an adult,
right?
You tell that to an adult now, and it's for sure. They're either broken down or they're like, I hate you. Like it's one of those. Yeah, 100%. It's the mindset.
Yeah,
and it's it. And so Ray does that whole thing of like win or you learn, right? And I was so fired up on this, and I'm like, yeah, and he's like, and then you win or you what? I'm like, if you fucking lose, and he's like, no, and I'm like, no, I mean you learn. Like he sucked me in that whole thing, but that's it. It's that learning process that's through the failure, and then just continuing to go for it. And again, I like to use sports analogies for a lot of things, but basketball too. Like you start out shooting, you suck, you're missing everything. You start shooting free throw, you suck, you miss, and you just keep going until now you make it more than you miss. It's literally that easy. It's not. It's that simple. It's that simple. It's not easy, but it's that simple. It's that same kind of concept. Just keep doing it. And if it's your best work, great. And then go back and do it better next time.
How about, so actually you mentioned yoga, so they do have that, but I'm wondering, like I played a lot of sports as a kid. Like is there something intrinsic other than that, like that these kids do physically each day, or is that optional for these kids? I'm guessing. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have, we got the yoga there. Obviously, there's breaks for them to get out there and run around, and we have, kind of a physical education that's more of a fitness, kind of related program. That's something I want to build out more though in our new Sacramento campus, since we're going in and doing a complete redesign of that building. We're putting a full on gym in there. Yeah, which is great. And again, we like to use our facilities to do development for adults too. We want that to be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right, for something good. And so we're putting a full on gym in there. We got bags. We've and actually Smokey hooked us up with the guy from Fuji Mats, right? So we're getting some, getting our bags, getting our mats in there. So we'll have we'll be able to have martial arts in there. We'll have get our racks in there. We'll have a full kind of a full fitness facility in there. It's a huge part, man. It's a huge part.
Yeah,
and it's not, it's piss poor in traditional environments. We all know what PE look like, it's a joke. We actually want to have physical fitness, physical training, get back to, which again was kind of an old school sort of thing too. Yeah. We absolutely want to put that in there. And the program that Tim and I are working on too is geared more towards young men. And that's ultimately, we want a physical campus around that. And so that will include a whole lot of martial arts, but also include gun training, gun safety, hunting, all of those kind of things as well. So for the young men, they actually do that. So yeah, which is super cool.
Go ahead. No.
A lot of the people that went through the school, do they currently now work for the school?
That's happened. We've got some of those, but a lot of our kids that have gone through.
I'd imagine you would enjoy it and be like, hey, I'm just going to stay here and keep working.
100%. But we had a lot of them that are landing their dream job. We have some that come out, and we had a girl that came out and her nonprofit was already grossing 7 figures. So it was like,
she's like, I'm out.
I'll take a gap. I'll take a gap year or two. And I just run my business. And we got some that are going, straight into universities because it makes sense for them. We got some that are going into programs like Praxis that are more apprenticeship based. We got some going at literally everything. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Literally everything.
We got a question from the live chat.
Yeah.
It's Gar. Hopefully that's pronounced correctly. Don't know what kind of name that is. But basically they're just asking like, how do you have like performance indicators? Like, how do you know if a student is thriving or, I don't know, they need somebody to guide them a little bit more?
Yeah. How do you know you're thriving in anything? Right. We like to measure things, and that's one of the things with school. That's one of the things that we feel safe with, is when we can measure it. But again, when it gets to stuff that really matters, how do you measure how much you love your wife? How do you measure, right? So then what is the definition of how do you know they're thriving? If I've got that mom who tells me I have a completely different child at home, they're ridiculously happy, they're taking on more responsibility, they're actually, they're making money in their business, they want to go to school every day, they're making friends, like they're happy. So I would say that that's thriving. Right? I would say that that's a thriving thing. So again, depends on, it's the context of what we're talking about. If we're just going to focus on academia, you're thriving if you're getting better, period. Like you can still measure, academia is the easiest thing to measure, right? And so I fully get the question because we get that all the time. From a project standpoint, is this your best work? And what we do from a very general sense is, we give kids, if it's going to be a writing piece or it's going to be, an end result of any kind of project, we want to give them as close to a world-class example as we can. And go, look, here is a piece of writing that would be considered a persuasive essay, right? And this is a world-class example of persuasive writing. Don't plagiarize it, obviously, but copy the style, copy the format, right? I'm not like, copy that kind of stuff and see, and that's how you learn how to write, right? And so then the next time you do it, you take that and you go, okay, how can I get it better? And you want to give it to your peers, and we have all of these systems in place, but to just get better. If you are getting better every day, you're thriving. If you're happy in that, you're thriving. If you're productive, you're thriving. You're treating people well, you're thriving, right? It's what
getting a 90 on a Civil War history test doesn't mean shit.
It doesn't mean
school is like,
it means the same thing as whatever score you got at Scandia on your fucking mini golf game.
right.
It means the same thing.
Yeah, right.
Like, cool. That's how you played that course, that game. You got that score.
You may have paid attention.
Congratulations.
You may have paid attention in school, and you may have enjoyed that particular subject. You might have a decent memory.
Yeah.
But does it really show much improvement as a person?
Right.
And maybe you can start to say, okay, well, if you did 90s all around, then that means that you are maybe a self-starter. Sure. There could be other qualities in there, but do we have to learn stuff that we don't want to learn in order to know that, and in order to gain an advantage over other people to be a self-starter? Fuck no.
Exactly.
That's unnecessary.
Exactly. And just because you have academic aptitude does not translate to success. IQ provably does not translate to success. Right. Provably. Like, it does not. It's all those other things matter so much more.
Your emotional intelligence is probably huge, more important, because then you just have the ability to communicate with people, which is...
That's it. Then you've got, like you said, self-confidence, right? You got the confidence because you've actually done some things. You have self-awareness. I know what I'm good at. I know what drives me. I know what makes me happy. I know how to build a life around, 7 days a week. I can do things that I need to do because I also happen to like what I'm doing. Those things are way bigger indicators. So,
how about the teachers or instructors or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, we call them, good. We call them guides.
Guides, okay.
Yeah. They're like the mentors, right? So they're kind of watching. They're trying to gauge kind of the energy in the room. Is everybody having a good time? Is somebody struggling on something? What kind of questions do I need? They actually don't lecture. They don't answer questions. They will only ask questions. That's one of our rules. They don't answer questions, right? So they will only ask questions. So
what do you think of this? They say, well, what do you think of that?
What do you think of this? Or how could we figure that out? Or what would we? So
my kids hate me for that.
You'd be a great teacher there.
For sure. But that's it, because it makes them think and have to figure it out. So then by the time the students are older, if they've gone through that system, they don't even bother asking a freaking, like, what's the point? Like, that guy's not going to answer it, So it's way harder to be a guide than it is a teacher, because you're having to continuously watch that, kind of watch that energy, psychoanalyze everybody. Like, how do I ask this question that gets you fired up, and then I ask you in a different way, gets you fired up, and then if things are devolving, who's kind of my sheepdog that's in here that will kind of bring things back? And it's Smokey. So Smokey, what do we need to do right now to kind of, like, what do you think? If we look at the contract and kind of the way these guys are doing, like, what could we do to kind of help fix this? And when they say we, they mean you, right? And so it's like you're Professor X in the background, right? So it's hard to find those people, because they've got to be, first of all, on board with, from a school standpoint, they've got to be like, yeah, dude, this is the way it's supposed to look. But then they also have to be a natural connector with other humans. They actually have to like people. You don't have to like people as a teacher, right? You just have to like the system. And so they've got to really connect. That's a DNA thing, more than it is something you can teach.
Yeah, is it hard to maintain a guide? Because I'm just imagining, like, somebody who wants to be an educator, and they find themselves there, and they're like, man, what am I, like, screw this, I'm gonna go do my own thing now. Like, is it, like, as far as, like, their business, like, maybe they became an educator because that's what they went to school for, right? And then they come here and they kind of all of a sudden see what's happening with these kids starting their own businesses and stuff,
and then want to go do that stuff. That could, realistically, if they started out as a teacher and then they came to us, it's probably not. I've had so many people that have walked in our doors like, oh my gosh, I've been teaching for 20 years. I've got to be a part of this. I'm like, you just said bad words to me. You just said you were a teacher for 20 years. Like, you were involved in the other cult for 20 years. Like, no, dude, this is not going to be the place for you, because you're not going to be able to unlearn all of that kind of stuff, So, but I encourage the entire staff is on this mission for these young people. And I also encourage them to, what does that look like for you long term? What is your journey long term? Allie is here and she does media and marketing for us, and she's amazing at it. She's also working on being an actress. Awesome. I want you to do both, right? And I'm going to pour into that. I want them to pursue what we're doing on our mission here. And there's room for them to continue to grow within the organization as well. I mean, we're making it so that there are multiple things they can do within the organization, and I want them to pursue what they want to pursue outside of that too. And my job isn't to care which way they go. My job is just to pour into them as human beings, just like their job is not to care from the young person. It's to pour into them as human beings and making sure that they're growing how they want to do. I look at it the same way as the guides look at the kids. I work with the staff that way.
Yeah. And can students get rid of a guide?
Yep.
How does that work?
They are able to give that feedback anonymously or non-anonymously. And if this isn't something that's flat out, it's not something that's going to pertain at our place. We have amazing human beings, and that's not just pandering to my staff. They're awesome. Like, that would never happen with Web, but that has happened. And kids will have they have town hall meetings every single week. They can have those town hall meetings in their studios by themselves, or they can have the guide there, right? But they get to choose what that looks like. They'll run the town hall meeting, and if they want a town hall meeting without the guide present, and they want to talk through, like, hey, the guide is not abiding by the contract, and they can give valid things like, hey, look, this is where they're not. We would ask them to then have the guide and go, look, you're not abiding by the contract here, and here. We'd like to see this as a, it's kind of a performance review, right? Like, we'd like to see you change this and this and this. And if the guide does not do that, then they can bring examples to the owner and just go, hey, look, here it is, proof's in the pudding, and they got to go.
The fostering of community in this, man, is totally insane. I mean, in a good way. It's insane in a good way, because it's like all these kids are just learning how to be fruitful members of a small community.
Bingo.
Which you don't learn that necessarily, especially like in normal school, public school. There's always cliques and stuff,
for sure.
And there are kids that are out and they're not able to be within this, and they just do their own thing, and kids just don't know how to be a part of a group.
Exactly. That's part of the biggest issue. And people, well, about we need school because of socialization, right? I'm like, cool. You can learn socialization in prison too, right? You can absolutely learn it there for sure. Not sure it's the right kind. Not sure it's what you want. There's a reason cliques form in prison too, because that's a safety thing, right? And same thing that happens in school. These are my safe people, right? And so that's my rival. That's my rival gang over here. And the reason a lot of times those form is because when they're in prison, they don't have a voice too. You're told when to do what to do. You're told to do it here. You're told to take a shower here. You got to stay in line here. The most relevant, I think, kind of comparison systemically for what we do with our kids in school from a purely observational standpoint, it's prison. It's that same sort of thing. Yeah. Right. And so of course all of these
we even feed them the same.
And we do. We feed them the same.
I mean, you feed them food that intentionally makes them like sluggish. Slows them down.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It spazzes them out and then slows them down.
Low quality stuff.
So
they stop moving around so much.
100%. Right. You're lobotomizing these individuals, and then they know they don't have a voice, so they're trying to figure out, well, how do I have a voice then as a human being? And so you do that by bullying, or like bullying does not exist.
Nice.
It's not a panacea. There's kids, there's humans. People will have disagreements. And sometimes the younger kids, until they figure out how to do this, the disagreements can go like little kid disagreements can go, but we don't have bullying, and it gets nipped, quick. Mm-hmm. There is no bullying, especially once we enter the gun safety part of it. It'll be all good.
When you
you're excited about that.
Yeah, no. When you said gun safety, all right. First off, like I shot in a range a few years ago, and then my friend got into guns recently.
Yeah,
and I guess it was another time I was in the range, and I was just very aware of the guys around me shooting, and I was like, damn, I could die anytime.
Yeah.
But the other thing was like, when we started talking more, and this might be kind of beside the subject, like we were the only two black dudes on that range.
Yeah.
It was Sacramento Gun Club.
Yep.
And we were the only two black dudes there. He has a friend that owns a bunch of guns in Roseville. Went to this guy's house. He's a former Marine. He's a white guy. And he started teaching his kids how to shoot and be comfortable around guns since they were like 10.
Yeah.
So one of his sons comes out with a shotgun and he shows it to me. He's like, check this out. And I'm like, oh God. And it's just like, it's so great that you're teaching these kids not to be scared of guns, or you're going to, I don't know, you said it's not, but you're teaching them not to be scared of guns, and how to deal with these things in a civil way. That's something that I wish I learned as a kid. Because when I went to the range, I was legit frightened.
For sure. Because it was unfamiliar.
It was very unfamiliar.
Right. We grew up being told you don't talk about religion, politics, money. Right. So what that's created is a whole bunch of people who can't talk about religion, politics, money.
Yeah.
Right. It's that same concept. Expose early, expose often, have the conversation around. It's a real, they're not going away. So understand the good uses for it, the bad uses for it. Make sure the character of the human being is there. No gun's ever killed anybody by itself, right? And make sure the character is solid there, and we'll all be better off for it. Yeah. Yep. That's it.
Cool. Where can people find you, and where can they find out more about your school?
Appreciate it, man. Acton Placer. So Acton Placer is Placer. And you can go there to actonplacer.com. You can find Acton Placer on IG or Facebook, all that. Under mine is my stupid French last name, just Matt Beaudreau, and the Essential11 is our outreach podcast, and was honored to have you in there, man. Had a good time with that.
Anytime. I'll come back on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. So yeah, they can go to any of those spots, man. Get some more info.
Anytime you want to bring some of those kids over here to check out the gym or check out the facility, or you want me to come over there or do something, that's or awesome. Maybe we can come over there and show them some workout stuff or something. It would be fun.
Oh, that'd be rad. That'd be rad, especially with the SAC campus with the gym that we'll have in there. That'd be super fun, man. That'd be amazing.
I know this guy doesn't look like he works out, but
yeah, you can't tell.
He's gone to the gym a couple times.
It looks like he's been there once or twice. Yeah, for sure.
Take us on out of here, Andrew.
Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Thank you, everybody, for who was chatting on the live stream. That was really cool to see you guys here. I know it's been a hot minute since we streamed live, so we appreciate it. Please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bowles Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course right here on YouTube. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where you at?
Again, you're freaking amazing.
Yeah, this was dope.
This was so dope. When I have a kid,
brother,
he's going to this school.
Please.
Or she. At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Inyang on Twitter. Mark?
I think one of the best things you said was that, like, if you had a perfect day, that there would be no adults supervising and the kids wouldn't even notice and they would just carry on as normal.
Yes, sir.
I really like that a lot. Anyway, I'm out of here. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. Catch y'all later.